Hello and welcome to the Arsenal BiteSize Podcast. We're here for the final preview before the World Cup versus Wolves at the Molineux Stadium. I'm, of course, FPL Nima, and I'm joined by my co-host Clayton. And we're really excited at the prospect of going into the World Cup top of the league, hopefully. I'm hoping throughout the course of this preview that I'm going to be even more optimistic of a win because we've had some very tight games over the years against Wolves, and they've generally done quite well, haven't they, against top six opposition?
Yeah, they always come across as like a bit of a bogey team, isn't it? And you always expect like a 1-0 scrappy game. But same as you, just it feels weird, like our final preview before the World Cup, and obviously it's a realistic goal to hopefully go into the World Cup top of the league. And I don't think any of us would have been saying that when the season started. I think we all had strong, confident aspirations of top four, but the team are really going a level beyond that at the moment with the performances and consistency. So, I am nervous for tomorrow, I'll be honest. I think it's probably like a negative fan bias thing partly, but genuinely what you say, you always expect a tough game when you go there. It's quite a hostile place and tight pitch. We'll see how we get on. But I think we've just done so well so far. And to be honest, just even from doing these pods, like it's quite sad it's our final preview for the World Cup. I really enjoy these. I think I prefer these to the reviews. I don't know why. I think it's a chance to predict, right? Rather than kind of like the reviews. You just kind
there
of
can always be a bit of hindsight, isn't there?
Yeah.
Whereas this before, we're almost a bit more naive at this point. We're kind of coming into it not knowing what's going to happen. So we'll do our predicted lineups. We'll do our predicted scores as always for anyone who's tuning in for the first time. These are normally 20 to 30 minutes, so the previews are quite short and snappy. And then we'll do a review of the match against Wolves on Monday.
Yeah.
We do have some interesting plans over the Christmas period, so we're not just going to stop and wait until Boxing Day, of course. We are looking to do the round table we've discussed with some of the viewers. So we'll have a look at our season so far. We're going to do a couple of special pre-recorded episodes for the first time. So do let us know if there's any topics you'd love us to cover during the break about the Arsenal. And if you're in the live chat, thank you so much for tuning in live on this Friday lunchtime to watch along with us. Make sure you put in your predicted scores as well as we go through the episode, and we'll make sure we pull them up on screen and give some shout outs to anyone who's tuned in live today. So let's go straight to the predicted lineup, I think. We said last week that Zinchenko's inclusion, despite not playing for a month, was a clear statement that this is what Mikel Arteta considers the best starting 11. For the podcast listeners or anyone who's new, if you've kind of put your head and buried it in the sand and don't know our best 11, we're expecting it to be Ramsdale, White, Saliba, Gabriel, and Zinchenko again. Partey, Odegaard, and Xhaka in the midfield with Jesus, Saka, and Martinelli up top. I don't think this is probably the first week where neither of us had much of a debate on left back, have we?
Yeah, I didn't even ask you, did I? I just whacked it in the slides.
Every week we've always debated: is it Tierney? Is it Tomiyasu? Is Zinchenko fit? Has he come back from not existing?
I think the only thing worth calling out is obviously Arteta's presses at 3:30. So if there's anything that we're unaware of, so if there's like enforced errors, injuries in training or anything, enforced errors, enforced injuries, I meant. I hope I'm not preempting something for tomorrow in terms of an enforced error, but enforced injuries, you never know. But in terms of the actual 11, I think 10 of the 11 has picked itself most of the season. And like you say, we've just had debates around left back, but nothing more to add to really ahead of tomorrow. What a team it is.
It's honestly, our starting 11 really gives me joy. I think there is a bit of a drop off as we've seen maybe on the fringes of the squad.
We completely
we didn't even
over Wednesday, did we? I think that says a lot about where we're at with it, to be honest. But
let us know in the chat how you felt about the loss to Brighton, the 3-1. I think we started out well. It was a fantastic goal by Nketiah, who's been on a bit of a drought himself.
What a run from Nelson as well.
Did it remind you a bit of when Jesus had that very calm, composed finish against Leicester, where he also chipped the keeper and curled it into the top corner?
It did and it didn't, just because this was more he was running onto it and placed it, where I think Jesus's one was more like the backlift to kind of just generate that from it was almost like a standstill position. But we probably should touch on the Brighton game, I guess, isn't it? Just give our opinions on
I think just even a minute or two. So I guess the goal, that was the only goal for us. So as you say, Nelson made a great driving run.
He was brilliant. Obviously, the game wasn't televised anywhere, right? So should I just quickly give?
Yeah,
I
because
was
you
at
were
the game.
obviously fortunate to be there. Yeah, so yeah, tell us a little bit
Yeah,
from your perspective. I think that would be interesting for people to hear.
yeah. I mean, nothing new to learn really, other than the encouraging performance of Nelson. I thought he was absolutely electric. Like the way, so he was playing on the left, right, and he was just phenomenal. The way he was picking up the ball. This is gonna sound very hyperbole and like a bit going fishing, but it's not meant in that way at all. It's just an easy comparison. He is everything that you think you're getting with Sancho, like that performance on Wednesday. Genuinely, the way he was driving at defenders, dropping the shoulder, beating a man, linking up play, and like, he quietened out a little bit in the second half, and then he got moved out to the right, which didn't help. But anything positive that was looking like happening was coming through him, and like he was the only person to be. I didn't give a shit on Wednesday. Like going into the game, was I never want Arsenal to lose, but going into the game, I was not like buzzing as I usually am. I wasn't like, oh, I'm praying we get through to the next round. Like, obviously, on one hand, it would be good for that kind of fringe 11 to get more minutes, and it's a competition that they could hopefully go far, like how Liverpool have done in previous years. But I don't want our first team anywhere near that with the amount of congestion we've got coming on the other side of the World Cup. And yeah, in terms of the actual performance, I just want to credit Brighton, really. I think I've heard and read a lot about De Zerbi and how they play, and it was really nice to watch it in the flesh, genuinely, like their composure and bravery on the ball when building out. And like I always talk about our positional play and how we move structures. They did it to us, man, and it was an uncomfortable watch. Like I don't know if you've seen the goals, but the way they kind of, I think it was the second goal, the way they really maneuvered and manipulated that space. They got that numerical superiority against our last line. Like obviously there was, like El Neni should have tracked the run, and that there were things we could have done better. But I just think sometimes when you're seeing how we do it to opposition teams so often, you know it's easier said than done to defend against. And I just think they were very good. I really enjoyed watching them, which is quite odd to say. I've seen a lot of comments on, I don't know if you've seen this on your timeline, on like Vieira, Lokonga. I just, as I always say, it's so hard to judge players coming into these sort of 11s, and like it says it all. Nelson for me was the only one that really stood out personally. Like Nketiah, really good finish. I think he did well, but I just don't think you can read too much into these 11s. I'd love to see the likes of Lokonga, Vieira, how if they need to slot into our starting 11, how they look in that kind of case. But in terms of the game, I'm kind of glad we're out, if I'm being brutally honest. I know it seems a bit arrogant. It's a chance for silverware, but I genuinely think we've got bigger fish to fry. The league and the Europa League is absolutely the priority for me personally. But yeah,
Yeah, I think
what's your take?
yeah, I think for me, like as you say, like with 10 changes to the starting 11, there's only so much fluidity you can expect. And I did see stuff about Vieira and Lokonga, especially Vieira. There's a lot of people telling him to hit up the gym, but you know, I think if you're saying it, then you got to imagine he probably thinks it. He's actually come
Yeah,
out in an
true.
interview and said it, right? So he actually came out and said, you know, like I'm coming to a new country. I'm getting used to the language, the culture, the people, the city, the team, the structure. He didn't even have a preseason. He was injured, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Arteta
there's
said
so
that as
much
well.
more
Yeah,
time. Yeah, there's so much more time for him to show what he's worth. I know that at 30 million or whatever it was, we might expect him to come in and like be ready to go, but we've seen that it can take, you know, players coming into a new city, a new league, and leaving their family behind, for example, especially young players, just some time to settle. And not everybody comes in and immediately does a William Saliba. I think we just have to accept that. Saliba had played a lot more men's football by the time he joined us from those
yeah,
loans. I'm not concerned about Vieira at all. I think if you drop him into like an established starting 11, like the one on the screen here, and let's say one day he plays instead of Odegaard,
yeah.
you'll
Like the
see
Brentford
you'll see
game, right?
more of him. Exactly, like at the Brentford game, we saw much more of what he's capable of. I wouldn't look into yesterday too much with 10 changes. Obviously, it's a shame to lose. I do think Brighton played very well. You know, it's a deserved win by them, so no sour note there. And you know, I'm happy to have less games. Like if we're going to be
Yeah, same.
serious about, you know, really going for it in the league and trying to get deep in the Europa and maybe win that tournament, we want to minimize as many games as we can this congested season. And the reality is we're now going to miss 2 games for the last round of 32 in the Europa. So that's
And
fantastic.
yeah,
And then we also have this which has been moved. I think
And they're
by us
straight
falling out
after
of
the
it.
World Cup final. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, so it's even before. So obviously the Premier League returns on Boxing Day, but the next round of this cup would have been like December 19th and 20th
Yeah,
or
that's
something. So,
insane. We don't need that. Like,
yeah, and the further we would have gone in this competition, had we gone further, the more of the starting 11 we would have then ended up being tempted to use.
exactly. And like, imagine we've got a small squad as it is anyway, right? And as much as I'm saying it would have been good for these fringe players to get consistent minutes, imagine if any of them pick up injuries. Imagine if Holding gets injured. We're then forced into using the likes of Gabriel Saliba. Imagine if Lokonga, Vieira get injured. We're forced into using potentially Xhaka, Partey, Odegaard. Like, you don't want or need that. Yeah, and I've just on Carl Hein.
Yeah, I
I
think
thought
you
he
have to
was
touch on that because it's very unfortunate in your
I thought he
debut.
was so unfortunate, and I thought he was fine. I thought his distribution was really good. Other than that, it's just it was an unfortunate slip, like which you can't really do anything about that, to be
Because
honest.
he
So
would have
I felt
comfortably
for him.
got the ball, right? Like
Yeah,
he would have been favorite for the ball, and obviously after the slip, he was kind of then forced into making the foul that led to the penalty. Like you can't really do much. It's just unlucky in my opinion.
yeah,
You can't judge someone on that. And it was interesting that he did start over Turner. Obviously, Turner's looking like the
yeah.
number one choice for the USA in the World Cup as well now. And there's no Stefan in the team from what I saw, so
All
you would
right,
imagine
okay.
Turner's the going to be the number one. And I question like how many more games is he going to get for us this season if we're now out of this cup and once we go deep in Europa, like I imagine Ramsdale will play. So kind of
Yeah,
running out of opportunities for him to play, maybe some early FA Cup rounds, I guess. But
I'm just checking. Yeah, Turner was on the bench as well. I was just checking if he was in the squad.
yeah, he
Yeah,
was
that
on the bench and everything. So that was very interesting. I thought maybe because he'd made 10 changes, he just wanted to give Hein this opportunity to get out there. But it seems odd because Turner's going to get limited amount of games as it is.
yeah, he must have seen something or heard something in training that like that it wouldn't have just been for no reason, right? It's just it's a reason we're not really partial to seeing, unfortunately. But
Exactly.
yeah,
Okay, cool. Let's go to the next section. Just before that, quick shout out as well to Pontus Johansson. Thank you for tuning in. Good to
yeah.
see
Cheers,
you
mate.
as always, mate. And he just has a little bit to add as well. He says he's, obviously we always want to win. He's not bothered if we lost, and he agrees about the being in one less competition might be better for us. Especially when this is a competition that, in the way that the FA Cup is the Arsenal Cup, at this stage, I'm comfortable
This
to
is
say
the
the
City
League
one,
Cup is the Man
right?
City Cup. Yeah, like
Yeah,
when you win it like 4 or 5 times out of the last 6 seasons, I think just the depth they have, it's clear that they
yeah,
can compete on 4 fronts. That is not
yeah.
something we're ready to do this season.
Exactly.
And just in terms of Vieira, he does also add that, if you look at the amount of games Vieira started for Porto last season, just him getting games right now with us this season is great. And this isn't supposed to be his breakout year. Like, this isn't the
Yeah,
year we want him as an established starting 11 player. Cool. So
yeah.
this was the Wolves lineup in the league versus Brighton the week before. So they went into, for the podcast listeners, they went in with Sarr in goal, Semedo, who got a red card, Collins, Kilman, Bueno, Traore, Neves, Matinho, and then Gedesh, Huang, and Podence. In a kind of 4-3-3. I know in the past when we've played Wolves, they've played that kind of back 3 or back 5. It does seem that they've moved to this back 4, but then they've sacked the manager who wanted to play the back 4, right?
Yeah.
I believe that the new coach, they finally found one, but he is going to be put in position the day after we played him. So we are
Oh,
technically
okay.
going to be playing a managerless Wolves still.
That's what one of my questions was because I wasn't sure. Okay, I probably should have done more homework on this. If he took over like midweek, I think they played Leeds, right? So the new manager isn't in post until after our game.
Yeah, so I think we play on the 12th, and I believe he comes in post on the 13th or 14th of November.
Okay, cool.
So
Well, yeah,
this
that's
should be,
interesting.
yeah, that's probably good news for us. No new manager bounce. He's not had time to go to the training field with them and prep
He's
them.
really highly rated as well, isn't he?
He is, he definitely is. I think overall, there isn't much to say here. Obviously, they lost 3-2 to Brighton, which is a bit of a kick in the teeth for them.
Yeah,
I think Wolves have been a strange team this season. They've been one of the teams who've struggled to score goals the most. I'm
yeah.
not sure how many goals they're on right now. I'm going to check, but like last I checked, they only had 5 goals in the league so far, which obviously after these 2, it's maybe more like 7. But
Yeah.
it's a very, it's a very small number of goals to be scoring. They're really struggling. I'm just having a look here at Wolves very quickly. So yeah, so they're sitting in 19th in the league on 10 points. They have 8 goals and they've conceded 22.
Wow. Okay.
2 wins, 4 draws, 8 losses. You can kind of see what's happened with the manager being sacked. It's a bit unfortunate, but what can you do?
It's
Yeah, so they've
interesting.
scored 8 goals in the season. That's less than an average of 1 goal a game compared to like our kind of fluidity going forwards. You've got to think we're definitely favourites regardless of away from home. And in fact, we've kept 6 clean sheets away from home in the league this season.
Yeah,
We're doing very well away
we
from
are.
home, actually. And that's something that's really important because I know in years past, our away form was horrendous. So even though it's not quite the width of the pitch that we want, that we have at the Emirates, and we don't have the home crowd, I think we're doing great away. And I don't know if you noticed, but when I was watching the Chelsea away game on TV, all I could hear was the Arsenal away fans singing, to be honest with you. I could hear the same
Yeah.
songs I hear at the Emirates. I don't think I've ever seen Stamford Bridge so quiet. So
Oh, you have. Their fans are rubbish. Yeah,
big
I think it'll
shout
be
out to the away fans.
I think it'll be different tomorrow. To be fair, Wolves. I was there last year. Like their fans are decent. To be fair, but I agree on everything you're saying though in terms of like the actual matchups and stuff. And then even just taking it one step further, so obviously they've only scored 8 goals. I always like to look at like the underlyings behind that. In terms of like their non-pen XG per 90, they're the third worst team in the league. They're like putting up 0.9 each game like that. And then you compare that to us, we're currently joint with City, right? 1.82 per game. And then if you look at defensively, it's interesting. What did you say? They conceded, was it like
22
21
goals.
goals? 22
Yeah.
was it? So yeah, they've supposedly conceded that many, but their underlyings aren't awful in terms of chance non-pen against. So they're only one,
Yeah, that
two.
was kind of my thinking. Like, I'm confident we can score, but I think that the amount of goals they've conceded is a bit deceiving.
It's inflated. Like
There's a few
yes,
games where like they've let in bucket loads, but overall, like this feels like one of those games where I feel like there could only be maybe like a 1 or 2 goal margin in it. It's not going to be like some 5
yeah.
0 against Wolves. Like, I just do not see that happening. And I guess we'll get to the score predictions as well and give our respective
Yeah.
predictions. But do let us know
It,
what you guys predict in the chat too for this game.
it is interesting though, because in terms of the underlyings, only Tottenham, Newcastle, Brighton, West Ham, ourselves, and City are better than them. So like
For the
that,
XG against them, yeah.
yeah. So that is quite a big disparity from the like the underlying uh, predictability of it versus the actual output. So I've not looked into too much detail if it's been insane bad luck, if it's been bad goalkeeping. But yeah, fingers crossed it falls into our hands tomorrow. Just
I
one
hope
thing I've
so.
kind of looked into as well. I don't know if like you've looked into any specific matchups or anything, but I was looking again at like kind of the areas that they concede chances and stuff, and they concede a lot of crosses from their left flank. And like obviously, if you think about like us on the right, like the way Saka, Odegaard, Ben White, they manipulate that kind of right half space. I think we like what recently we've been looking at the graphics and it's like zone 14 and the half spaces. I think on tomorrow we can get a lot of joy if we kind of get into that right area and get crosses into like the likes of Jesus peeling off defenders, Martinelli at the back post. If there's second balls from the crossing, the likes of Xhaka, Odegaard in those central pockets. And so they're the 4th worst team for crosses conceded from their left flank, behind only Everton, Forest and Bournemouth. So in not great company there. And then in terms
So
of
I don't know who was playing at left back, but I know that Bueno's more recent addition there.
yeah, so I don't know if it'll be like 8 Nori or like they've had a few people that keep
The fact that
chopping and
they've changed,
changing.
yeah, the fact that Bueno's come in, it does maybe imply that they'd also seen that leak down that left hand zone, and they're trying to try something new, right?
Yeah, and then just in general, like they don't concede too many chances down the center, but their flanks either side. So on the left, they've conceded 50 chances, and on the right, 49, and they're like in the bottom 4th and 7th for that on each flank. So I just think like where we're so good, like I think Party could have a really big part to play on Saturday tomorrow because I think if he's getting the ball and pinging it out, you know what you were talking about in the last episode about how we manipulate the ball, we wait for the right time and then bang, we get it out. I think we might see that quite a lot tomorrow. And if we can isolate the right people, get numerical superiority in areas, the likes of Saka, Martinelli taking on their fullbacks, I think we might see quite a lot of openings on the flanks. And yeah, that's one thing I just found interesting statistically.
I guess
Looking
I
at Wolves,
expect, yeah, I guess I expect us with the kind of the strengths in our team's strategy and their weaknesses on their flanks to create quite a lot going forwards. I suppose the
yeah,
question will be how clinical we are, because as we know, like we've been kind of struggling to score as many goals as we did at the start of the season. Partly maybe because Jesus has got 1 to 2 goals a game that he could be finishing. So
yeah,
hopefully that kind of catches up with him and that variance swings back the other way. I think if we are going to win by a big margin, it will be based off of like a massive return from Jesus. So
yeah. Hopefully,
that's
anyway.
something I'm looking at. So we've got in the chat, Pontus is saying 2-0. He's looking at
Nice.
as the scoreline. We've got Rajat Madrid looking at a 1-0 again. Yeah, I think for me, it's going to be in that region. I don't see like a massive big
No,
F-off
I don't
victory
either.
coming. The main thing is, I don't care how we win, but we absolutely need to win, because psychologically, spending 6 weeks at the top of the league over the break,
Yeah, it would be
that's
huge.
huge for us. Yeah. And
Yeah,
there's already talks about the transfer window, right? So, there's a lot of hush hush, but we're looking at a party kind of backup in Danilo. Obviously, the Brazilian season ends now in January, so
yeah.
they didn't want to give him to us in the summer, which is why we kind of went for Douglas Luiz. It was mid-season for them at the time. Equally, we've also been looking at the winger. I butchered his name last time, Mordric.
Luka Modric.
Yeah, Modric. I called him Modric. Yeah, so Mordic or I don't know how you
I
say
don't
it.
know how to pronounce it, to be fair. Like, I've probably butchered it. I'd say Mudrick, but I have
Mudryk,
no
yeah, no,
idea.
I think you're closer to it. Yeah, you're closer to it. So he's looking like an exciting talent. I think
Get
they want
Zinchenko on the
60
pod.
million
Tell us
for
how to
him.
do it.
That's true. Hopefully he can convince him to come. It'll be great to get him. He looks great as a wing option for us that I know we were also looking for in the summer. So I'd like to think that with the position we're in now, whatever happens on the weekend, that the club and the hierarchy and the sporting director and board, they're all looking to kind of bolster the ranks.
100%.
Arteta's been very clear, right? He said multiple times in multiple interviews, this is the squad we have. This is the squad we had at the start of the season. He wanted more players then. He said he needed a few more numbers.
He wanted
That's not
more in the
changed.
summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he absolutely wants more. And I think he sees it as an opportunity to kick on. Like, I think we're performing above fan expectations, but I think for him, he probably sees us on track for his targets. So yeah, I hope and think we will get a couple of additions in. But I just think the biggest thing for us is, like, obviously as fans, we kind of just want top four, right? Like, as a minimum, get that secure. And I think most of us are kind of looking, can we kind of progress, push on and make second our objective, and then who knows beyond that. But to do that, I think we're just giving ourselves so much buffer room, because in the Europa League, we're not going to be able to rotate the way we have so far in the latter stages. And I think there will be slip ups in the league. And that's why, just get another 3 points on the board and give yourself the room to be able to slip up should you need it.
We both know what would have happened if we'd not topped that Europa group. It would have been us against Barcelona, not Manchester United.
Exactly.
It's very scripted at this point. When you see the likes of Bayern, PSG, Madrid, Liverpool, Arsenal, United, and Barcelona, it's very it's a curious incident that happens. But yeah, I think Arsenal and Barcelona.
You're one of
in
the
last
tin
16
hats, aren't you?
Yeah. I feel like Arsenal versus Barcelona is like the typical go-to, like first knockout round match of any European tournament. So I'm glad we dodged that bullet, because I'm pretty sure that's exactly what would have happened.
We've had some awful experiences against them in another European competition, so I'm not sure I'm ready for that again yet.
At least the good news is, with the way the kind of the matches have played out, there's definitely going to be a few people who are potential favorites in the tournament getting knocked out early.
Yeah, it's really good. Like, a few of the strong teams have drawn each other, so yeah, that's all we can ask for, right? And then just kind of do our own thing when the time comes.
Cool. So let's get our score predictions out. So we're still in the same place we were before. We've both predicted 12 wins out of the 13 games. We've predicted 1 draw. We've not predicted any losses. We've actually won.
That's
11.
wild when you think of that. Like,
it is crazy. I would never think I'd be predicting a win nearly every week and no losses.
Like, flipping. Oh, that's kind of crazy.
Is
your first one coming this week?
No, still no losses yet from my perspective, and definitely not a draw. If we play at the level I think we can, and having rested 10 people and being knocked out of cup, you got to think it was in prep for this match. So
yeah,
I am going to go for 2-0.
2-0. I'm going for the exact same. Yeah, same as Pontus as well.
I almost went for 3-0, but I don't want to risk having my kind of emotions stop my logic. And I know that we're very close. I've had two or three correct results, and you've
You've
had
had
one or
3
two.
correct. Yeah,
Three.
you've
Okay,
had
so you've
3.
had two correct score lines. I've had three. So, as long as we have the same prediction, then you can't make up that
I
one
can't catch
missing.
you.
Yeah, exactly. That's my
Yeah,
thinking.
I want to go different just to try catch it, but like logically, I think it genuinely will be 2-0. I think we'll have we really start games fast now, don't we? Like that's no longer a surprise. It's just something that you expect, and I think we'll see that again tomorrow. I think we probably will score fairly early, quieten the crowd, and then I think we'll do our annoying thing where we go into handbrake mode and then come
Get
out again second
5,000
half.
passes.
Yeah, but like I think, yeah, I just really hope it's not a repeat of like the Southampton game. I hope it's a repeat of like Chelsea, Brentford, Forest, like that,
Bit more
just
dominance, yeah.
controlled dominance and just get the job done. Like to be honest, like yeah, I don't really give a shit how it happens. To be honest, just get the 3 points, get into the World Cup, top of the league. I think that would be the most important thing.
On that note, it was very frustrating to not be 4 points ahead when well, maybe not 4 points, but obviously City winning in the last minute last weekend, that was a bit painful considering what we
Yeah,
then went on to do the following day. But it does show that I think City are capable of dropping points in matches that people maybe don't foresee them doing it in. They drew with Villa earlier in the season as well. I think there are opportunities if we continue focusing on our own game. There's been some really interesting. Before we wrap up and answer some of the comments from Rajat in the chat, and if you've got any other questions or comments, guys, let us know. But before we answer those, I just want to say there's a few other bits that I found interesting in the presses. Obviously, Pep's come out again with a few more interviews. He's talked about, Arteta being like this genius, and
oh yeah,
they told him that, I think it was Rio Ferdinand told him, you've created a monster, Pep. And he was like, no, he was always a monster. And I look back at the interview Pep gave when we lost 5-0 last season and we had Holding and Mari in the back line against City early on last season in that really bad stretch of 3 games to start. And even then, after that 5-0, he was singing Mikel's praises. I think it's good to see that consistency and like sticking with our manager, even through some very bad runs we've had. There was the period the season before last where we won 1 game in 10. We got 3 points out of 30, and it was coming up to Christmas. I remember that was mad. And I think Chelsea had been good to us. We were going to play Chelsea that time, and everyone thought Arteta was going to get sacked because it would be like the 11th game of like losing in a row.
I think that was
And he
Boxing Day,
beat them.
wasn't it?
Yeah, and he beat them. And then Lampard got sacked instead. So I think those debates where, Lampard was there, Ole was there. There's a few of these different managers where all of them have been sacked. And here's Arteta with the youngest team in the league, youngest manager. And the project's trajectory looks very exciting
for me, though. Like I do think, when people say, "Oh yeah, just give your manager time," this, that. It's not that. Like I don't know if you felt the same, but for me, why I was always so confident in Arteta was like I think it was helpful being at the games as well and seeing it, but the structures and passages of play in bursts were incredible and with utter shit players. Like in 5, 10, 15-minute spells, you could tell the structure, the moving of the ball, but the players weren't capable of doing it to the level we're seeing now. And I think at the time, that's why I was so comfortable. It's like, it's a bit of a crap analogy, but you don't give a chef like rubbish ingredients to go make a gourmet meal, do you? And I think that's how I look at it with Arteta. I was always of the mindset, if you give this guy the specific quality players, because the structure for me was elite. I didn't doubt that I could see it. I just hoped he would get the right players to implement it and execute it. And I think for me, that's all we're seeing now. It's similar principles that are just being applied by players that are better capable of executing them. Like when you're trying to get the likes of Bellerin to take one touch, ping it out, and you compare that to how Ben White's doing it. And like you said, Pablo Mari, Callum Chambers was getting a bit of game time. Like I think that for me is the difference. For me, I never doubted what he was trying to do. It was just a case of give this guy the players. And one thing you might have seen this a lot in like fantasy football Twitter back then, like people were looking at our XG and our XG against, and the underlying numbers, of course, they were bad because we didn't have the players to sustain it for periods. Like I think that's where I am very keen on data. I think it's very good and a very predictable way to view things, but I think you absolutely need context. And for me, that's what seeing the games was giving me the context I needed to know how good this guy is. And for me, it's as simple as that. I really believe that.
Yeah, no, I think I've always kind of backed him. I people used to ask me like, "Are you Arteta out yet?" When we went through that 10-game spell the season before last, and having witnessed that and survived it, when we then lost the first 3 games of last season, I was much calmer because I was like, we were expected to beat Brentford, but then we're playing the Premier League champions and the European champions. Like,
I was so
I
calm
expected
after,
3. Yeah, I
yeah,
was expecting 3 points from 9. Okay, we got 0. Okay, it is what it is. 4 or 5 players from the first team had COVID. Okay, whatever. Like,
yeah,
but it was that 10-game spell that really tested me because even then I
yeah,
was
me too.
still very much Arteta in. But I remember someone asked me, and I actually responded and said, "Look, okay, I'm not Arteta out, but I'm not sure if I'm 100% Arteta in at
Yeah, no,
this stage."
I was similar. Like, I think that's the thing. It's like you don't have to be Arteta out as such, but like I was always of a firm. Sorry, I was always a firm believer in how good he is, and never doubting that. But I had periods where I was pissed off. I had periods where I thought he made mistakes. Like, that's normal. You're never going to go through a
He
whole
was
kind of.
learning on the job as well, right? Like, obviously, as we say,
Yeah,
like
like
youngest manager.
my biggest one was I remember. So even in that 10-game period, I can't remember specifically why, but I was sticking with him, like, and I because of what I just explained, right? I was seeing periods, and there were so many individual mistakes. But the one that really sticks out, where I was really angry, was the Palace game at home. Like, we drew 2-2 last minute, and like, that game for me, I remember saying to my mate that I was angry. I was really disappointed because of how we got outplayed. But it was never a case of go sack the guy. Like, never doubted, give the guy the tools because the framework is there. And yeah, just really happy. I can't remember how we got onto this topic, to be honest, but yeah, just really happy with how it's going. And like, he will like, you know what I always say about how people struggle to proactively see things. This guy will have a top managerial career. Like, but unfortunately, people won't accept that until they've seen a trophy cabinet, right? But like, it's sometimes you can just tell when someone's destined for the top, and like, he absolutely is.
Yeah,
Just hope
no,
we continue to back him financially and
I hope so.
emotionally.
I think January will be very interesting. So, just to comment on a couple of stuff in the live chat before we get out of here. So, I think this is just worth pulling up from Rajat. So, it was just continuing on the Vieira conversation we had earlier about his performance against Brighton and more generally this season. So, he says, Vieira needs to put some muscles on for the Premier League. Pontus kind of both agrees and disagrees. So, he talks about kind of the likes of Bernardo Silva and David Silva. So he just says that, like, maybe he does need to bulk up a bit, but it's more about getting used to the tempo. So I think let's give both our takes on that. Yeah. So I do agree with Rajat, and like, obviously, like, it would be ridiculous not to agree, because if Vieira himself has come out and said, I want to bulk up, I'm going to the gym 3 times a week to get bigger, like, he's clearly saying that. So if he thinks he needs to, then who am I to say he doesn't, right? Like, he himself is saying this. But one other thing I think is, I don't think it's just tempo. I think our league, we always talk about how it's much more physical. Like, this season, there's been a directive of letting play go on and stuff more often than not. I did notice a few times when I was at the stadium and he was playing, there was moments where he was kind of on borderline being fouled, and obviously he would get taken out, but the ref would wave play on and get up. And I think for him, that's a kind of baptism by fire of this league. Like, he's realizing bit by bit that it's great being a technical player. Maybe you can't be the biggest, bulkiest guy out there, like if you're relying on your technique and vision, and he's more of a kind of creative player. But in this league, they take no hostages. Like, people will just lump into you and good luck. So I think he's now realized that's probably why he wants to pick up. And I compare it a bit to Saka. I don't know, like, when he first broke into the team, he wasn't really that strong. But now when I look at Saka, he looks like he's really well well conditioned and strengthened, and but he's not bulky, right? Like, he looks strong, but I think he's just grown into it, and he's better at holding off his man, and he can take some of those challenges. Obviously, he's getting bloody challenged left, right, and center every game. But so I think Vieira will probably hopefully go through a similar thing, where it will be his kind of technical brilliance that is what he's going to bring to our team, but he just needs to get used to this kind of environment, because I think in Europe, like, a lot of stuff that get uncalled for here, like, they are fouls over there. And he's come from an environment where he plays like that, right?
I do agree to an extent, but I do think that kind of narrative of like the Premier League welcome sun, like it's kind of overdone for me. Like I'm with Pontus, if I'm being completely honest. Like I think I forgot who his examples were, but like the likes of David Silva and
I think Bernardo Silva's a good one because
Bernardo,
because Portuguese fans I've spoken to, they kind of liken Vieira's skill set to Bernardo Silva. Obviously, he's done nowhere near what like Bernardo Silva was one of the Premier League.
No,
players,
you're just.
But in terms of like
attributes,
actual, like the actual attributes, what their strengths are, the way they play, the kind of role and position he could play for us is similar to that of a Bernardo Silva at Man City if he can get going.
Yeah, I think for like why I'm with Pontus is with the Premier League, like okay, let me go a step further back. In the Portuguese league, he was absolutely still getting fouled and stuff. Like fouling is not specific to the Premier League. I think it's the aggression that people maybe come into the duels with that is the difference. But the likes of Bernardo, David Silva, like they've absolutely mastered it in the Premier League. And for me, it is adjusting. That's why I quite like. I don't know if he was thinking the same thing when he said it, but how I interpret the word tempo in that is it's the difference in kind of manipulating the space. So like when the ball's coming, you just got that you've got that less second to think about when someone's coming into you. And it's about manipulating your body accordingly to how you address yourself in the duels, I think. And that's for me, the biggest thing. Obviously bulking up a slight bit won't harm at all. Cause like, yeah, I agree. You've seen it with the likes of Saka and how he manipulates the ball and stuff. And he does get kicked the shit out of each week, but I don't think that's something that wasn't happening in Portugal. I think it's just a case of acclimatizing to a slightly quicker pace in how people arrive in duels and tackles personally. But I think when you're playing in possession-based teams, you try and manipulate the space so you've got more space to kind of get around and like, yeah, you don't get involved in those duels as much because like no one says it about Odegaard, right? Like,
yeah, no, that's true.
He's not exactly.
Yeah, he's not super tanky, is he?
Yeah.
No, I really like that. That's a really interesting. Yeah, I see what you mean about tempo now and how that could be interpreted. And that's really, I really do like.
I definitely agree with what people are saying. By the way, it's just not to the same level of importance. I think that's all.
Yeah, like that's not the only thing he needs to do. Like, if he just bulks up, he's still going to have the same problem he has now if he doesn't adjust the rest of his play style.
Yeah, because I think I always look back at that Newcastle away game, right? We got absolutely bullied and like Palace away. But for me, it wasn't a case of stick bloody 5 Yaya Torres Vieiras in there. It was a case of if you have technical security and you win. Like obviously, athleticism is something that absolutely plays a part. But for me, technical superiority trumps it 8-9 times out of 10, especially up here mentally. Like I think if you're one step ahead, you predict things that others don't, right? Like and yeah, I think I always refer to those sort of games as I think if we had the likes of, I don't know, I can't think of example of players, but if we just had technically secure options in the center of the pitch, I think we would have been fine, to be honest. And yeah, it's something that I place a lot of value.
But I think there was one thing in common with a lot of those kind of KG away games at the end of last season, and that was that Partey wasn't there in the midfield.
Exactly. Yeah,
I think that's the player you're thinking of that we were massively missing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cool, that's how I view it.
All right, let's get out of here. And just to answer your other comment as well, Rajat. So, so the new manager at Wolves, I've just double checked this. He will start in the role on the 14th of November. So 2 days after we played them.
Isn't it? I guess it's because of the World Cup. But like,
he rejected them last month, apparently for some personal reasons. And there was something he had to resolve. So I don't know. I feel like he almost needed some time because he's dealing with something before he can come in potentially. Right. That would make sense.
Fingers crossed it plays into our hands, right? So
I hope so.
Yeah, let's get this bloody job done. I'm going to be there tomorrow. Very excited.
I've got to see some photos as well. I'm looking forward.
Oh, you will, no doubt. I'm going to make my meniscus injury worse. Yeah, obviously you've got FPL meets, right? So I'm upset I'm not going to be there.
It's a shame you won't be there. If anyone who is listening who does play FPL and is around and free in London tomorrow, we're going to be in London Waterloo. From like midday to midnight, there's 8 televised games. There's 20% off all food and drinks. It's obviously free entry as well. There's beer pong, darts. There's foosball. Everything's free. Yeah, so do come along. We even have a football trivia board game from a company called Pundit Games that have like a Trivial Pursuit for football, basically board game.
That sounds
and
close.
They're going to come and run a tournament as well and put people in teams and give away copies of their £50 board game to all the different winners who go through groups. So We'll do that during the 3 p.m. games when they're not necessarily televised. But it's going to be one of the best ones with obviously Arsenal playing at 7:45 Saturday kickoff.
There's 3 televised games, I think, isn't
yeah,
there?
12:30 Man City, then you got 5:30 kickoff, and you've got the 7:45. So
who's the 5:30?
I'm not sure actually. Let's see. I'd love to see. So it is Newcastle versus Chelsea. That is tasty.
Oh, that's a great game.
That is tasty. So yeah, so anyone who can come, do come. If you can't come, do check out FPL Meets on Twitter. We're trying to do them every week, every month, sorry. But we're also starting to run like meetups, community-focused meetups all over the world. Football managers coming together, rival fans, watching games together, and just using this one common interest we have to meet new people and have a great time. So do contact me on Twitter if you ever want to come. And just a quick shout out as well to Dream Team Professor who tuned in live before we go. He loves your kit. For anyone on the podcast who can't see it, do quickly go on the YouTube and look at this epic retro kit that Clayton is wearing.
Not the best model, but yeah.
It's a lovely kit. And yeah, I'll talk to you on Twitter, Dream Team Professor. Yeah, there's going to be many more. I don't think there'll be any proper ones in like December necessarily, but FPL Juice, who do a live in studio FPL podcast, they're holding a big Christmas party, and they're going to do a live FPL podcast on the 20th of December with a big party afterwards. It's completely not for profit, but as you can imagine, there's some venue hire fees they need to pay, and they've also brought in lots of games and giveaways. So I think they're charging a small amount for that ticket, but if you did want to do something FPL related, come to the big Christmas party. I think they're looking to get a lot of managers together for that 20th of December. But yeah, up the Arsenal for the weekend. Hopefully we can go into the World Cup at the top of the league, and we will see everyone on Monday for the Wolves review.
Yeah, up the Arsenal, final review, final game. Let's bloody get 3 points, get to the top of the table for Christmas.
And I didn't plug it at all in these 41 minutes, but if you did enjoy the episode, found it entertaining or helpful, please do hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, do subscribe. It really helps us out, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on what content you want to see during the World Cup. But
yeah, just to re-emphasize what you already said, right? We're not going to just kind of disappear after Monday. We have got plans to kind of keep the channel active through to the first game back. So yeah, let us know what you want to see, and we'll take it on board.
Awesome. Lovely to see you. Have fun at the match tomorrow on the away trip.
You too.
And see everyone soon. Take care. Up the Arsenal.
Up the Arsenal.